Hey guys, it is week four of module four recap video. So this week was a lot less intensive on content. There was still a lot of it. There wasn't as much as there was last week. I'm still kind of recapping from last week and thinking about how commerce and the market affects creativity. But it was super interesting to then come into this week. First, we talked about Everything is a Remix. That was a four-part video series talking about how everything we have has kind of been remixed off something that was previously created. So as technology and culture has evolved, our creations have gone from resembling, the ancient to what the ancient Greeks created, to having, Greek theater, and theater evolved over time as we and culture has evolved, and we continue to remix new things to make more new things. And then eventually, we'll continue to remix things for the rest of time. After that, we had this super big essay series called Breaking Smart. So if I had to explain to you Breaking Smart in a few words or a sentence, I would say that what I felt like was the main point was do it and ask for forgiveness. So Breaking Smart puts a lot of important names that can get kind of confusing, so I'm not going to try and explain them because they confused me a little bit. But so it talks about how there's two roads of life. So there's a road that's very orderly. They're not going to break out of anything new. They're not going to actively seek advancement. They're going to be content kind of where they are. And there's a road of life that is going to grow and expand and meet needs before people realize that they have those needs. And because of that, they're going to evolve and thrive. So it talked about how there's kind of different things that go into that, but there were a couple things that stuck out to me. So he used a quote by Henry Ford that talked about if you would have asked the market what they wanted, they would have said they wanted a faster horse. So the market doesn't always they can't always tell you what they want, and they don't always have realistic expectations as to things that they really want. So they didn't want a car because they didn't think it was possible. They wanted a faster horse, whereas Henry Ford was able to design, the Model T and provide a vehicle that pretty much anyone could have. So it talked about that. It talked about how the world approaches network in some different ways. So there's a way where we problem solve, and we identify a problem, we formulate a plan to be a solution, and then we execute that. There's another way, and it's the way that the networked world approaches it, and it's based on tinkering. So it thrives on things that come up unexpectedly. And so it talks about how when you're problem solving in this other style, you're going to immerse yourself in relevant streams of ideas, people, and free capabilities. You're going to experiment and uncover new possibilities through trial and error, and you're going to leverage or double down on what works well. So when you start looking at problems and you start immersing yourself and experimenting and leveraging things that work, you're going to see growth in a way that you never would have before. Another thing that really stuck out to me that was kind of what is this at first, but it was really cool the way that they bring it into play. So there's an article called 19, Free as in beer and as in speech. And I was like, I don't quite get that. So I read it, and it talks about that people are learning to be free as in beer and free as in speech. So first, people and ideas were increasingly free in the sense of no longer being considered property to be bought and sold like beer by others. Second, people and ideas became increasingly free in the sense of not being restricted to a single purpose. They could potentially play any role they were capable of fulfilling. For people, this second kind of freedom is usually understood in terms of specific rights, such as freedom of speech, freedom of association and assembly, and freedom of religion. What is common to all these specific freedoms is that they represent freedom from the constraints imposed by authoritative goals. The second kind of freedom is so new, it can be alarming to those of us being told what to do by authority figures. So, it was really interesting to think about how we as a culture have evolved into this free as in beer and free as in speech, where everyone is kind of contributing, but we're not selling ourselves, we're not property that someone can take part in owning. We are a human, we are whole, and because of that, we have ideas that are unique to ourselves. And so when we can learn to, break smart and break out of the system, we can kind of walk in that free as in beer, free as in speech. So there are a couple other things. It talks about how in the technology world, which is what Breaking Smart believes that our world is kind of evolving into, they do this thing called RERO, and it means release early and release often. So instead of waiting to have this perfect piece of code that's going to work and never have any issues, they're going to release code early, and when they find issues, they're going to fix it and release code again. So they're going to release it early and they're going to release it often. But overall, Breaking Smart talked a lot about culture. So it was kind of similar to what we went over last week. It talked about how people will overestimate the short-term goals and change in culture and underestimate the long-term change in culture. So when we think about, marketing a new product, in the short term, maybe no one's really going to get into it. But in 5 years, maybe it's finally a need people realize they're looking for a solution to, and they're going to kind of get behind that and support that. But until you have it out there and you have it in the market, people can't do that. So there was a quote kind of early on in the essays that talked about it's kind of one of the setting the stage articles or essays, and it said what the smartest people do in the weekends, everyone else will be doing in 10 years during the week. And so it was interesting to think about what the smart people do right now. So what Bill Gates does right now on the weekends and his free time is what everyone in 10 years is going to be doing during the week. And it was super interesting to think about because am I doing something that 10 years ago people were doing on the weekends, or am I doing something that 10 years from now people are going to be doing on the weekdays? And it made me super conscious about the way that I'm spending my time, what I'm doing with it, how I'm using it. Am I doing something that's going to get me where I want to be, or am I just doing something because I'm doing it? So they talked about some other things. They talked about how ideas aren't tidy. They talked about software is going places that people and money, no, software is going places that money and writing can't go. And because of that, we live in the technology era. So if you aren't going to get on board with that, you will be left behind. And for someone who has a love-hate relationship with technology, it's kind of a hard truth to swallow. But overall, the concept of this Breaking Smart essays was that you have to kind of form this ability to navigate uncertainty, and that looks like having strong views and weakly holding on to them. So being willing to kind of adapt to whatever your environment is, but knowing what your views are. And I think that's something that not a lot of people can do, because it's hard to know what you believe and not and be able to accept other things. So overall, it was a really good week. There was lots of great content. It was very thought-provoking in my own life. I mean, am I doing things that are worth my time? Am I spending my creativity nicely? What am I releasing early, and what should I be releasing often? It talks about creating more value than you can capture. And so what does that look like? What value should I be creating? How am I creating value? I mean, one of the last points that I had taken notes on here was this word, intertwinkled. And it's a smash up of intertwined and tangled. And it talks about people, ideas, and things have multiple fluid meanings depending on what else appears with them. So, I mean, we have to think of life as this intertwinkled being, and we have to find, we have a chance to pull out the meanings depending on, the situation we're in. So, what meanings am I pulling out? Am I pulling out meanings that are going to make me a better person, that are going to get me where I want to be in 10 years, that are moving along with culture? Or am I pulling out meanings that are kind of putting me in this gridlock and stopping me where I am? Who knows? I guess I'll think about it a little bit more and get back to you guys. But that was it. It was a really cool week. I don't know how to turn this recording off. Oh, wait.